Welcome. Hello. Good evening. Good morning. Good afternoon, depending where you are. My name is Adelia Agora-Sade, and this is my channel, Picky Girl Travels the World. It is my little corner of the internet where I do my best to demystify travel, money, and everything in between. I left the US 8 years ago. Have lived in 4 different countries, currently calling Mexico City home. So I share what I know and what I do here. So thanks for joining me today. If you are interested in life abroad, travel, particularly solo travel, or just learning to be better with your finances, this is the place for you. I am a financial educator and I also co-host Reclaim the Retreat. So if any of those things are of interest to you, be sure to subscribe to the channel, maybe even hit the like button on the video. That will let YouTube know that you want more content like this to come up in your feed. For those of you who are joining me live tonight, how are y'all doing? For the people who are new, I typically go live on Tuesday nights. I believe it is about 8 p.m. Eastern. It is 6 p.m. here in Mexico City. So welcome, welcome. I know, given everything that's been going on in the world, and particularly the last few, I was going to say the last few weeks in the United States, but if we're honest, this nonsense has been going on for much longer than that. I just thought about something with the most recent Supreme Court rulings. I made a video last year in response to, them striking down race-based affirmative action and all the anti-LGBT stuff that they did. And I'm like, here we are a year later, and like there's even more nonsense and BS. So, if you're feeling like I maybe need to start thinking about having somewhere else to call home. Maybe it's been an idea in the back of your head for a while, or maybe you've just reached your limit and you're like, this is it. I need to go. And maybe you're at the beginning of that journey, figuring out where would be a good place for you abroad, but you're running into a big issue. If you're going to live somewhere else, you need money. And currently, you work a 9 to 5 job. And so uh, it is very easy as you start to like join the Facebook groups and watch YouTube videos like the ones on my channel. It is not unusual to start to feel like, oh, everybody who is living abroad successfully is working for themselves. They are an entrepreneur, and that's what I have to do in order to live abroad. And so that's what I wanted to talk about tonight. Um, do you have to own your own business if you want to move abroad? And if those of you that are here live, and even those of you that are watching in the future, watching the replay, are you looking at making a move abroad? And is this a concern of yours as well? Finding a traditional job versus like maybe I need to start my own business. I work with folks one-on-one, and I'm thinking of one client in particular who, when she came to me, was 100%, maybe 150% convinced that she needed to start a business. She was super stressed out at her current 9 to 5 job. She was like, I'm retiring, I'm getting out of here. But I need a business to support me abroad, and was so gung-ho on that. But by the end of our conversation, we discerned that that was not the right move for her. So I am curious where y'all fall into that. And if you want to drop that in the chat, please feel free. Um, I think we've got to start maybe to reframe, and this is not going to be true of everybody, but I think a lot of us are going to need to reframe how we think about moving abroad. Most of the people who watch this channel live in the United States, Canada, or the UK. Those are all countries with really strong passports. And often, not always, often those of us with stronger passports sort of get blinders on and kind of see the world as our oyster, and we can go anywhere and there are no restrictions. And particularly when we're traveling for vacation, that really is the case. Most of us, I think, on a US passport, it's 156 countries we can go to visa free. um, so that means when those of us with a US passport, a Canadian passport, a UK passport decide, oh, I want to go visit this place, there are very few uh, roadblocks for us. But then when you're thinking about moving abroad, it can be very dangerous to bring that same mentality with us, because moving to another country, you're immigrating. And we really need to reframe our thinking. I know that, the use of the term expat versus immigrant, there's a lot of controversy about it. But the reality is, if you are moving to another country and your intention is to be there and live there and not return to your home country, that makes you an immigrant. I am a proud immigrant to Mexico. When I lived in China, I did not call myself an immigrant because I was not trying to stay there longer than I had to. When I lived in Kuwait, I did not call myself an immigrant, although technically I was an economic immigrant, because I definitely wasn't staying there, but I am an immigrant to Mexico. So I think a lot of us need to reframe how we're coming at this and sort of check our privilege at the door, because that's going to make navigating those next steps and creating a plan a little bit, possibly a lot of bit more difficult. I think right now I'm particularly talking to those of us who live in the US or have lived there or spent a lot of time there, because some of that experience you can use to help understand other parts of the world. Now, the question we started with is, do you have to be an entrepreneur to move abroad? Well, most immigrants are. Okay. Use the United States as an example. About 13 in 2019, those are that's the latest numbers I have. In 2019, about 13.6% of the US population were immigrants. And I know for some of y'all, that might be shockingly low, because, the people, the because of the election year, they'll tell you the United States is being overrun by immigrants. 13% of the US population, 13.6%, are immigrants. And that 13.6% of the population actually owns 21.7% of the businesses in the United States, but they only make up something like 17% of the labor force. So being an entrepreneur and being an immigrant kind of go hand in hand. And if you think about it, there are a lot of things that those two categories have in common. If you are going to leave your home country, the place your people have been living for generations, you have to be a bit of a risk taker. If you are going to create your own business, you have to be a bit of a risk taker. Okay. So it should not come as a shock to us that immigrants often are entrepreneurs. Also, think about this, those of you in the US, those of you in Canada, those of you in Australia, the UK, there is a preference for hiring locals first. If you think about when you apply for a job, one of the first things you have to do is show that you have the legal right to work there. In the United States, that's an I-9. Here in Mexico, you have to have legal residency, and you either have to have permiso de trabajo, you have to have permission to work if you're here on a temporary residency visa, or you have to be a permanent resident, which comes with that. So this idea, I'll use myself for example. When I first moved to Mexico back in 2017, I ended up in a position to get a work visa. And in order for them to hire me, the companies are limited here in Mexico to the number of foreigners that they can hire. They had to prove that I was particularly specially qualified for the position they were hiring me for, that they could not hire a local for. And then they had to shoulder some financial burden in order for me to get that visa. It's similar in the United States, okay? And y'all know the capitalist hellscape we live in. Businesses are not trying to spend the money to sponsor people's visas. So again, it shouldn't shock us that so many immigrants are entrepreneurs. And then there's the whole language barrier, or, like, how many of you have taken a taxi, an Uber, somebody waited on you somewhere, and you get to talking to them and you find out in their home country they were an engineer, a doctor, a nurse, but in the US they're doing, manual labor kind of job, because often your credentials don't transfer easily. You have to get recertified, that sort of thing. That's what immigrants working in the US have to deal with. And it's the same thing when you go abroad. So I hope it makes sense to you why so many immigrants in the United States are entrepreneurs. And if we are going to leave the US or Canada or the UK or wherever and go somewhere else, we're immigrants, we're going to have to deal with the same thing. So I think that's why so many of us are finding um, like, oh, it would be easier, quote unquote, if I had my own business, then I wouldn't have to jump through these hoops to try and get a sponsored visa, what have you. I've met many immigrants like that, highly specialized in their own country. So, it's about reframing our perception and our perspective. I think when I did all those videos during Vlogmas in December, there was one where we talked about thinking like an immigrant, that when you move abroad, that's that's the mindset that you need to have. So, so you got to think like an immigrant. If you're trying to move to Mexico, you're an immigrant. If you're trying to move to France or Portugal, you're an immigrant. Um, the term expat, that I think folks will point out, rightfully so, that white people tend to be expats. brown and black people are often called immigrants, particularly like in the media when they're reporting on it. But an expat is somebody who typically gets a contract to work abroad temporarily. Like that contract has a time frame attached to it where they're expecting to go back to their home country. And if that fits you, then feel free to use that term. But like this is my home here in Mexico, so I am an immigrant. And like we said, we shouldn't be shocked that a lot of the same barriers immigrants in the US face to getting traditional jobs, that when you choose to move abroad, you run into the same ones. Now, so does that mean everybody needs to start a business so they can move abroad? No, that is not what that means, because I'm gonna be real with you. When I moved abroad in 2016, I did not have my own business. I had no intention of having my own business. I took, I got hired by a company, by an institution in another country to do the work I was already doing. So no, everybody does not need to start a business to move abroad. Everybody should not start a business to move abroad. There are ways to move abroad where you don't have to be an entrepreneur, but for some people, that is going to be the right move. So you really got to figure out, is it the right move for you or not? Being your own boss is not easy. Um, you do not have a steady income. Some months you making all the money, some months you're not making any. Particularly for the folks in the US, we associate having a job with a stable paycheck, health insurance. When you are an entrepreneur, you do not have health insurance. There's a lot of stress involved as you're trying to, support this fragile business, and you've got these dreams about what your life can look like when you live abroad. That's a lot. So if you choose that path, don't expect it to be easy. And anybody who is telling you that I am living abroad and I'm running my own business and it's so easy, they are lying to you. And everything that comes out of their mouth should be suspect. Okay. Um, th- that has not been the case for me, my business partner, my friends that I have that are also, running their own businesses. It's not it's not the easy way to go. Okay. Um, so, you know, if uh, if that is how you want to play things, I think the first place to start is to think about, well, honestly, the first place to start is figuring out, do you want to run a business? Is that right for you? Are there other options for going abroad? I did a video previously, and it is like there are several videos linked in the description of this video that deal with finding a job abroad. On this channel, I have interviewed multiple people, some who work remotely for a company, some who are, freelancers, therefore they're self-employed. And I've interviewed a couple of business owners who own brick and mortar businesses in their new country. And those videos are linked in the description. So, um, because owning your own business is hard, you really, honestly, should try to see if there is another way for you to go abroad. Like I mentioned, when I left the United States, I got hired by an institution in Honduras. They handled the visa process. They paid for my move. I got a regular paycheck. It was minuscule. It was a teeny tiny paycheck. I had health insurance. I knew how much money I was making every month. That was fine. That was fine. And I continued to work uh, a traditional job for the next 4 years. And then I decided I did not want to do that anymore because for me, that was getting in the way of the lifestyle that I wanted to live. So you've got to figure that out for yourself. But if you don't want to run a business, you're like, this is not for me. Going abroad, if you currently have a job, going abroad with your existing company is something you should investigate. On this channel, I interviewed Ivana about her move to Belgium through her employer. And I also interviewed, I can't think of the lady's name now, but she lived in Switzerland and she got a job offer, and that's how she was able to move to Switzerland. In both of their situations, particularly if you work for a larger multinational corporation, you've got to let people know that you want to go abroad. If you work for a multinational corporation and they have offices around the world and they have teams in different places, a position on one of those teams isn't just going to fall into your lap. You have to let your manager know. You need to let the people who make the decisions know that that's something you're interested in so you can kind of be on that track. Um, if you work for a smaller business and you're like, well, they don't have offices, nobody works internationally, nobody works abroad, I can't do it. That is not true. One of the links that I put in the description of this video is of an interview I did with, I think her name is Liza, Liza. The video was about her debt-free journey. But toward the end of the conversation, she talked about how after traveling the world, she wanted to continue to travel and be outside the US. And so as she went into a job, they were like, girl, we don't do that. And so she turned down a job offer. They came back to her and she was able to work out, like help write the policy for that company. That is possible. Again, a closed mouth don't get fed. So if you're working for a company that you really like with people you enjoy, it might be something to talk to them about. Review the policies that exist, come up with a not a presentation, but what's the word I'm looking for? Um, Maybe presentation is the word, but kind of like a plan and a strategy for what it could look like, because it may be that they've just never considered it. And if you can show, how it would work and answer their questions about like taxes and that sort of thing, proposal, thank you. That is the word I was looking for. Thank you. Like put together a proposal. What is the harm in asking? Because what's the worst they can say is no, but they can also say yes. And so her interview is linked in the description because that's what ended up happening. They ended up, it wasn't just she had permission to work elsewhere. They worked at developing kind of the company-wide policy. So don't fret and assume that, oh, I don't work at this huge multinational. There's no way that I can take my existing job with me abroad. You might be able to. So that is something to consider. Um, that some way that they can allow you to work remotely. You can get a job abroad. Now, I am not saying that that is easy. because depending on the kind of work that you want to do, depending on your salary expectations, um, getting someone to give you a work visa might be really difficult. Um, I don't know where you are in your move abroad process, but you should start to notice some things like European countries. If you want a work visa in a European country, if you don't already have permission to work in Europe, it's really hard. Even in the industry that I used to be in, there would be jobs posted in Italy and France and Spain, but it would say EU passport holders or EU work permit holders. Like they wouldn't even entertain non-EU folks. Um, but it is possible. And I did a video. Now, do I have the link to it? I don't. It is in the description of this video. I did about a year ago, I think, called Get a Job Abroad, where um, it goes through which countries are like trying to get people to work there. You know, somebody like Portugal, Spain, Greece, Italy. Those are four countries whose economies are not very strong. A lot of their young people are leaving those countries because the job prospects are limited. So trying to get a job in those countries is going to be an uphill slog. It's probably not going to be unless they have a very specialized shortage of workers, it's going to be a slog. But then there are places like Australia and New Zealand who are trying to get young people there. And they have a list of critical shortages. So it is possible, but it is going to take some work. So you can get a job abroad. Um, Definitely doable. I'm 6 to 8 months out from moving abroad. My skill set is such that it does lend itself well to entrepreneurship. I would not be able to work in my field remotely due to licensing restrictions. Exactly. Um, that's why you find a lot of people choosing to become entrepreneurs. Now, folks will tell you that if you're going to go the entrepreneurial route, start that business while you're still in your home country, like as a side hustle, so that you can nurture it and build it up so that it's to the point that it can support you when you're abroad, as opposed to doing it the way that I did. I do not recommend that, which is quitting your job with no plan and just the idea of I will figure it out, and building a business from scratch and trying to figure out is it going to make enough money to pay the things you need to pay? Don't be like me. Um, okay, so you can either go abroad with your existing job, you can try and get a job in that country, if it is a country that has critical shortages, or if you work in a particular industry that is in demand elsewhere, definitely something to consider. And I think I mentioned it in that video, how to get a job abroad, and it's worth mentioning here as well. Let's say there is a particular country that you have your heart set on moving to, and it is a country that it's very difficult to get a work visa. A possible alternative could be going to that country as a student. Now, depending on the country, some countries will let you apply for a student visa and use going to language school as the justification for the student visa. Some countries won't. Some countries, they want you there pursuing a higher degree. Often, you can find programs that are taught in English. I was watching Our Black Utopia on Sunday, and they were referencing someone they knew who was getting their master's degree in Portugal in English. And I think it was like $1,500 for the year. So, because I know when I mentioned going back to school, first of all, Black women, we got all the degrees. We've been in school for umpteen years. Okay. But this could work if there's a country that you've really got your heart set on and getting a work visa there is not working out and you really are not feeling the entrepreneur thing. Go there as a student. Generally speaking, most countries will allow people on student visas a certain amount of time after they have finished their educational program to be in the country and find a job. It would be somewhat easier getting a work visa if you've already been in that country for a couple of years working on your education, as opposed to trying to come from another country in. So that sometimes can be a workaround. Um, this is a great question. Have you ever heard of someone switching from a W-2 employee to a 1099 independent contractor with the same organization? Yes, this is one way people go abroad. Now, think about it. If you are working as an independent contractor on a 1099, you are freelancing and you are an entrepreneur. But this, because people who do this, and I've come across a few, um, often will do this because the the organization has rules about employees, where employees can be when they work for them, but they don't have those kind of rules for contractors. And so this is an option. Again, this is just like we were mentioning before, proposing, you know, helping to write a new policy. This could be a way um, to keep doing what you're doing, but be able to go abroad. Um, my any tips? My tip would be to, if that's something you're considering, to realize by doing that, what it means is that you are in business. Your rates need to go up because when you are an employee, your take home compensation also included things like health insurance, they were paying your taxes, stuff like that. Once you become a 1099 person, you're in business. You are going to be paying your taxes. You will need to come out of pocket for insurance costs. So what you are charging this organization needs to be more than what they were paying you hourly or by project or what have you. So that would be my tip, to realize that you are going into business and you need to up your price. Definitely. Okay. All right. So those are some options for the folks who are like, girl, no, I do not want to be an entrepreneur. Now, if our conversation to this point has not scared you off and you're thinking, as somebody mentioned in the comments, like my skill set I have really lends itself to entrepreneurship. I can't do what I already do because of licensing restrictions, that sort of thing. Okay, so start thinking about what kind of business model makes sense for you. Um, is it, so you got to think about your skill set. What is it that you can do? And that's everything that you do for your existing job, but also other skills that you have that you may not have monetized. Like if your existing job, let's see if I can think of an example. Your existing job is you are a graphic designer, but also you, I don't know, you also happen to be bilingual and you don't use your second language in your graphic design job. That's still a skill set that you have. Okay, so think about what are the skills you have. I would list everything out I can do. Don't Limit yourself thinking, oh, nobody will pay me to do that, or that's not a real job. I don't care. List out everything that you know how to do. Okay. Then next, you need to consider what are the things you actually like to do from that list and the things you want to do. Because just because you can do something and you know how to do it, doesn't mean you want to continue to do that. Like, I know how to teach a classroom full of 14-year-olds, but I don't want to do that anymore. Okay. So it's a skill set I got, but I'm not using that skill set in this part of my life. So then you've narrowed it down to things that you can do and you want to do. And then you've got to think about, okay, of the possibilities that exist, do I want to do a business that's online? Or do I want to do a brick and mortar business? I know a lot of the folks who talk about being able to work from anywhere, and the laptop lifestyle and being a digital nomad and all of that. Um, Focus a lot on online businesses. And yes, there is a certain amount of flexibility with that, but depending on you, your skill set, your interest, that might not be the case. There is a link in the description to the interview I did with Corinne, who opened a studio. She's an esthetician. So you can't really be an esthetician online. But in Mexico City, she has opened her own studio. And so she has her own brick and mortar business. Does that mean that she can't travel? Yeah, she can. But it's going to look different for her, what that looks like versus if somebody had a online bookkeeping business. Okay. Um, excuse me. So, uh, becoming an entrepreneur, maybe you've gone through your list. You're like, these are my skills, these are my interests. Okay, these are the things I think of work. Think about the lifestyle that you desire. Are you somebody who wants to be traveling for extended periods of time? Like, then an online business might make more sense for you. You think about, like being a freelancer versus like doing what you already do, but doing it for yourself. Like the question we had about switching from being a W-2 employee to being a 1099 person. Um, you know, or do you have skills and you're like, but I don't know what to do with this. One of the other videos that I linked in the description is about, it's called How to Afford to Move Abroad, and it gives you some ideas of finding the niche to create something new. So, for instance, um, there are a lot of people here in Mexico City and different places I live that are running online businesses who they need a HR person, or they need an administrative assistant or something like that. And so maybe you don't know that those kinds of needs are out there, and thinking about what are things that um, I don't want to call them digital nomads, but people who have online businesses, what are some of their needs? Are there things that you know how to do that could serve those needs? And you might have an idea for a completely brand new business that doesn't exist. I was watching something the other day and it was talking about college degrees and what a large percentage of the current positions that exist now didn't exist 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and how universities are not nimble enough to keep up with that change. And so this is something else that we've got to reframe, this idea that, like, oh, these are the jobs. You can make anything a job, you know. Uh, we're only limited really by our imagination in this situation, I think. Okay. So, we talked about owning a business. It could be online, it could be brick and mortar. What's important is that it's something you want to do. Just because you know how to do it doesn't mean that's the business you need to go into. I'm very big on, you know, it needing to be something you're interested in, something that I'm not going to go so far as to say gives you joy, but something that you enjoy, because we're not trying to move abroad to have a job or a business that we don't like. Um, Not at all. Okay. Now, if you're following, the suggested advice and you're starting your business before you actually go abroad and you're nurturing it while you still have the safety net of your 9 to 5 and your safety net around you, people in your circle who can help. All right. You're doing that and you're thinking about where it is and how you want to go abroad. One of the important things that I don't think gets talked about enough is visas, particularly because a lot of us come from countries with strong passports and we can often go be in a place for 6 months as a tourist. And so it's easy to think like, oh, I got a way to make money. I'll just go and not think about being there legally. I particularly because there's so many people now considering leaving the US that maybe weren't considering it before, I want to caution you about that, particularly folks that look like me, who is a lot of the people who watch the content on this channel. Um, Anti-Blackness is global. Y'all seen how the UK, France had these elections that were very polarized, the far right, the left. The US election is very polarized as well. Um, the far right is still trying to do their thing, and they don't like people who look like us. And I believe in being prepared. I tell you what, you never gonna catch me in a country where I don't have legal status to be there, because when they start to round folks up, when they start to crack down on people, we are an easy target. And that's why I think it is most important that we make sure we got our papers in order and we have the right to be in a place legally. So, if you are gonna go the entrepreneur route and you're trying to you sort out, okay, what kind of visa do I need? Before the pandemic, many countries offered business visas, entrepreneurship visas, okay? Because think about it from the country's point of view. Entrepreneurs tend to be go-getters. They tend to be hustlers. They tend to be innovative. Who wouldn't want people like that in their country, right? So, it's quid pro quo. I give you legal permission to be in my country. You come to my country and you create a business and you employ people who live here locally. Those visas have existed. Now, in a in the world we live in now, you hear a lot of talk about digital nomad visas. Though a business visa and a digital nomad visa are not the same thing, and I want to make sure we all understand that. A business visa, which could give you temporary residency that may be able to convert into permanent residency, um, and maybe even put you on the path for citizenship and having a passport. The idea there is if you're going to start a business and hire local people, the idea is you intend to be in this country. You intend to, live there, become a part of society, be there long term. Digital nomad visas are not really intended for that. What they are intended to do, because think about it, digital nomading, existed pre-COVID. But I think because so many people were working remotely during the height of the pandemic, and a lot of folks was like, well, I don't want to work at home. I want to work in this other cool location. A lot of countries realized, hey, we could get these people who have jobs and have money, because think about it, a country does not want poor people. I know that's a hard thing to hear, but no country is out there saying, please, poor people, people with no money, come to my country. Nobody is saying that. And I'm not talking about refugees. That's a different category. So these countries thinking about digital nomads, these are people who are making money. They're going to be in, they want to come to my country and spend their money in my economy. Why is that? Why wouldn't I like that? So it's kind of, quid pro quo. The country gives you the legal right to be there for a year, maybe 2 years. And they probably, and you get the legal right to be there. You get to experience a new culture, work in a new place. And maybe they throw in a little tax break for you. But a digital nomad visa is not intended for you to be there long term. Usually, they do not have a pathway to permanent residency or citizenship. So if that's your goal, a digital nomad visa may not be the best bet. A digital nomad visa is going to be great for somebody who is a freelancer, has a online business, who thinks I might want to be here for a little bit, but eventually I want to move on. A business visa might be a better route for people who want to be there long term. I interviewed a young lady, and I did not link this video because I just thought about it. I interviewed a young lady who was living in South Korea, and she didn't I think she went there to teach English, and she was like, this is not for me, but I want to be in South Korea. So she pivoted and applied for a business visa. And whatever their requirements were for a business visa, um, uh, she could meet them. And then, like, she had so many years to get her business started, that sort of thing. So that's something to keep in mind as you are doing your resources. They are allowing anyone to come to the US. That's not true. The United States is one of the most difficult places to come to immigrate to. The process is incredibly expensive. It has really high requirements, and it has one of the biggest rejection rates. So that's not true. Um, that might be the propaganda that you're hearing because this is an election year, but when you look at what it takes to get residency one place or another, and how many people the United States lets in, that's not the case. That's not the case. Um, okay. So like Italy has a new digital nomad visa. Colombia has offered one. A lot of countries are getting in on it. And you say it's vague. There's not a lot of information. That's another downside is some of these countries have like put the idea out there, but they haven't worked out what it's going to take. I will say this from what I've noticed comparing digital nomad visas, excuse me, it's hot today. They often have higher income requirements than you would be expected to do if you were doing a traditional business visa. So, and it varies, place like Portugal, for instance, and Spain both have non-lucrative visas. Those are visas for people who don't need to work, have money, have a passive income, and to move there. Now, Portugal has since developed a digital nomad visa, but the income requirement for the digital nomad visa is significantly higher than what it is for the passive income visa. And again, think about who they're trying to attract. With the passive income visa, those they're trying to attract people who are going to stay there long term and contribute and be part of the community. Digital nomad visas, they are targeting specific people who they feel make a certain amount of money, that they can benefit from those people being in their country for a few years, and then those people move on. I'm not saying one is better than the other. What I am saying is that as you are doing your research, you need to think about, what is your strategy? Is this a place that you're trying to be long term? Because you might, in the short term, a digital nomad visa might be your ticket in, and then maybe you can pivot to a longer term visa. It just depends, but that's something to consider. That is something to consider. Um, and the whether or not you get tax breaks. Now, see, that's an interesting thing, because countries want innovators. They want people who are going to create jobs, bring jobs, and they want people who are going to pay taxes. So those all of those things are going into the development of these various visa programs. What exists today may not exist in 6 months, may not exist in a year. Things change. Do y'all have any questions? Okay, Simi says, I want to be location independent, but thinking I need to have a business currently. I live abroad with a 9 to 6-ish. You know, Independence, freedom, being your own boss does give you that. As hard as it is being an entrepreneur, and maybe some of y'all out there, you're like, girl, what? Being an entrepreneur is easy. For me, it is not. But freedom, you definitely get more freedom. And that's ultimately why I decided to leave my traditional employment, because I remember sitting there saying one day, this job is getting in the way of the life I want to live. And so, something else to think about is, when you create your business, create the right kind of business that fits the lifestyle you want. If location freedom is important to you, a brick and mortar business might not be the best route. But if it's more about financial freedom, it's more about time freedom, like I can go into the office when I want, or I can work the hours I want, a brick and mortar might make sense. So, it's important to think about, what is the lifestyle that you want. I've been told and have experienced it takes an initial 18 to 24 months to want to remain in your adoptive country and feel like an immigrant. I don't know. Every country I have lived in, I knew immediately whether or not it was the country for me. Immediately, like I hit the ground within 24 hours. I knew. So I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Let's see. Oh, scroll through here. Um, I want to move. I moved abroad once through a student visa. I got a work permit allowing part-time work within 6 months. After I graduated, I got a work permit. And that's an option. Yes. And I think, like I said, that's a good, like, kind of workaround. So there are several countries that I am considering, that when I look at the visa options that are available and trying to figure out what's the right path for me, I'm keeping student visa in my back pocket. Um, H&D abroad, I'm 50, shopping for student visas that pay. As a teaching assistant, I'd work a few hours, can stay in the country for a year. We have options. Yes, and student visas generally do not have age limits on them. So, because, okay, so for me, right now I am coast fire. At some point, I'm gonna stop working altogether. And But because of how I have worked, I will not get a pension. I will not get Social Security. And a lot of retirement visas or passive income visas require that. So for me, there may be a country that I really want to live in, but I won't qualify for their retirement visa. And one of my possible workarounds might be the student visa. So that is definitely an option. Pamela, is this a question specifically about Mexico? Um, because, okay, because you mentioned the RNE program. That's why I asked if this is a question specifically about Mexico. A country like Mexico, if you Google like digital nomad visas, Mexico will come up on the list. But Mexico does not have a digital nomad visa. And that's something to be cognizant of or be careful about as you are doing your research is does if you are looking for a digital nomad visa, does the place actually have that? What Mexico has is they have temporary, permanent, they also have student visas. But for the permanent and temporary visas, permanent and temporary residency, you have to show a certain amount of financial solvency. And temporary, you get a year and you can renew it for up to 4. That financial solvency can be through a remote job, it can be through a business, it can be through an existing like regular 9 to 5 job. They don't really care where the on the whole, they don't really care where the money comes from, just as long as you have money, you're not going to be dependent on the state. And it works for digital nomads, but it is not a specific digital nomad visa. And I make that point because for a lot of countries, digital nomad visas will give you certain tax incentives. No such thing exists here in Mexico. So if you are, Pamela, talking about Mexico with that question, um, no, because the regularization program and the regular residency visa, 2 separate processes. You wouldn't want to pivot between them. Okay. Okay, Michelle says, I've done a deep dive on the official sites for countries I was interested in, and in France, for instance, has an artistic visa. Okay, so I think I know, and I kind of said this at the beginning, it is very easy to kind of get like deflated a little bit and think like, I have no interest in being my own boss, but that seems like the only way. See so many people who are living abroad who are, entrepreneurs. You just got to keep looking. There is probably a way for you to get into the country you want that may not be on everybody's radar. Monica, there is a website. I shared it because I can't think of what it is now. I shared it in one video, and if I can think of what the video was. Now, this is not the be all end all, but it was a pretty good site because specifically what I was looking for was something that would disaggregate the options based on like how much time I had to spend in the country. And I shared that tool. If I find it again, I'll put it in the description of this video. I'm going through here to see if there were any more questions. I've not come across any student visas that the visa itself had an age limit. I will tell you, as somebody who has had work visas in multiple countries, work visas often come with an age limit. Central America doesn't seem to do that, but like in a lot of countries, they will stop offering work visas in the late 50s. Because I'm thinking what they don't want is for you to become a retired person and then, pull on state benefits. I think in China, they would issue it up to 60 or 62, but that is something to think about if you are pursuing the work visa route and you are older. That may need to figure into your strategy like, oh, I can get a work visa from this age to this age. Will I have gotten permanent residency before I age out of being able to get a work visa? Okay. Um, I'm going back. And there are student visas that will let you work. My youngest was considering going to school in Germany, and I know that you could work like 20 hours a week and be a student. Uh, okay. I don't see any other questions up here. I think I'm toward the top. So let me go down to the bottom. Um, yeah. Now I'm throwing around this term student visas. I don't speak Spanish well enough to get a student visa in a place where the language of instruction is Spanish. But there are a lot of places where there are programs where the language of instruction is English. I don't know what languages you speak, but that's something to think about and consider. Um, okay. Ba, 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 ba. And I think we're going to see the digital nomad visa continue to evolve. Um, but again, it's the question we have to answer ourselves is, how do we want to support ourselves abroad and, you know, move things in such a way that they are aligned with how you the life that you want to live. Um, okay. How can we work with you if we need coaching or finances and moving abroad? Thank you, Maya, for asking that. You can work with me. I do one-on-one coaching calls, but I also do if you need something a little bit more long term. I do like 6 month move abroad coaching. Um, how do you do that? Let me see if I got a link here. You can go to my website, pickygirltravelstheworld.com. If you go to pickygirltravelstheworld.com/work with me, and there should be a place that says coaching. You can go there, or you can go here to bit.ly Delia. Bit.ly links are all case sensitive, so Ask Adelia is all in lowercase. Um, so I think that answers that. But generally speaking, if you go to pickygirltravelstheworld.com, you can get that information there. Um, okay, so we've got a question. Is there a specific program in Spain where you can work teaching English? This may have been asked. Okay, Spain and I believe France. I did another video, and you might want to go find this one on my channel. It's called Too Broke to Move Abroad. But um, Spain has a program, France has a program, Japan has a program where you apply to be a language assistant or possibly a language teacher. You get paid, you get a visa to be there. Now, most people don't do that long term. So it would need to be part of your strategy of how are you going to transition that if what you want is permanent residency or a longer term visa. I know in Spain, if you are there on a student visa, the amount of years, like if you are in Spain and you have a residency visa, after 5 years, you can get permanent residency. But if those 5 years were spent as a student, they only count half. So students would need twice as much time. And the language assistant visas, I can't remember, those might be considered student visas. So yes, there are some programs. I talked about a few of them. I do not claim to know everything, but if you find that video, Too Broke to Move Abroad, there's some options in there. Because again, if you don't want to open your own business, you can still go abroad. Okay, I lost the comments moved on me. I too am trying to stack residencies, but as y'all know, I'm picky, and I've also been spoiled by Mexico's visa process. It's very straightforward. Even with its eccentricities, it is compared to so many other programs, it is so straightforward. And I'm like, I don't know that I want to jump through all these hoops for all these other people. Um, so I'm still working on my stacking some other residencies, but uh, I feel you on that. Okay, I'm scrolling back through here. I got out of place. Okay, so here we are. Ba, 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 ba. Okay, I thought I saw a question for me, but maybe that was a question for somebody else. Yeah. Um, I will say this, if you are considering the Netherlands, apply and you the DAFT friendship visa. Yes, that is what it is. This is a special visa program specifically for US passport holders who can they can get residency in the Netherlands on a business visa at a much lower financial threshold than what the regular business visas have for everybody else. I don't know that that program will survive the outcome of the US presidential election. So if you're considering that, I would move with haste, because I think the United States is changing in such a way that the Dutch might not want to be our friends anymore and might not want to give us that special status. Um, if you want to attend, what if I choose to attend a university in Portugal, but also support myself as an entrepreneur? Is that possible? Possibly. It is also possible because Portugal got a few options. Like their D7 visa is intended to be a passive income visa, but they don't necessarily mean passive income in the way that we think. Basically, they don't want you to work in Portugal, like have a job physically in Portugal. But let's say that your business is structured in such a way that you just receive deposits to your bank account monthly from the business. Let's say you have an S corp and you're paying yourself that way. It's quite possible they may consider that to be passive income because you won't be taking a job away from a Portuguese person. So quite possible. Um, I think when I talk about being on a student visa and having the right to work, I'm talking about more the right to work physically in that country. We're also in a very kind of gray area that I think is going to stop being gray as we continue down this path when it comes to like how to tax people who work online, because eventually countries are going to want that tax money. Uh, I'm not talking about places like Portugal that have territorial tax schemes. Like I was looking at residency, the elective residency visa in Italy. You have to have passive income and you have to be in Italy at least 183 days a year because they want to be able to tax you on that passive income. There are some countries where the laws and the enforcement have not caught up with people working online and how to tax that money. But I think as we continue down this path we're on, we will see that change. Okay, any other questions in here? Yeah, I am picky about a lot of things. I used to think it was just that I was a picky eater, but I have learned that I'm picky about everything. Um, so yeah. D, I don't understand this question. Business visas meaning I don't know. Okay. I think I am to the end. Okay, so if you want to clarify that question, D, drop it in the chat. But I think I'm looking at the questions I starred. Did we answer all of those? I think we did. All right, so if you happen to be watching this and you are contemplating a move abroad and you need some assistance, there is a how to move abroad playlist on this channel. There are more than 50 videos covering, I think, almost every aspect of the move abroad process. I also have a move abroad checklist, which you can get. It is linked in the description as well at bit.ly/move abroad. Notice that the M and the A are capitalized. Anytime there is a bit.ly link, capitalization matters. If I'm trying to think of all the announcement things I need to tell y'all. Um, we have another retreat in El Salvador in December. There's still a few spots there. If you would love some time away to decompress after the US election, come with us to El Salvador. Come hang out on the beach, learn to surf, eat pupusas. Um, if you want to know more about the retreat, that is at reclaimtheretreat.com. And later this month, and I think I need to talk about this separately. But later this month, Ivana and I are hosting a Reclaim Happy Hour, which is kind of, if you're familiar with the concept of lunch and learn, it's the same kind of thing, but later in the day with beverages, where we're going to be talking about how to get the life that you want, like how to handle those things that are holding you back and keeping you from going after what it is you want, whether that's a move abroad, that's, growing your wealth, that's going after a new job, whatever. But last week we talked about the fact that we're halfway through 2024. And if you're like me, at the beginning of 2024, you made a vision board and you set some goals and you said you were going to do some things. And here we are 6 months later. Have those things gotten done? So this happy hour, this kind of lunch and learn vibe, that's what we're going to tackle. We're going to talk about like how to get unstuck and get those things that you want. There is also a link to that in the description. It's a bit.ly link that I cannot remember off the top of my head, so sorry about that. I thought I saw one more question. I saw you said something about cost of living in Mexico for 2025. No, not cost of living. Okay. Just like if you are considering the DAFT visa for the Netherlands, like today's price is not tomorrow's price, like it may not exist post-election or shortly thereafter. How much money you need to qualify for a residency visa in Mexico, whether it's from your savings, it's from your retirement, it's from your remote job, it is from your business, wherever the money is coming from. The amount you need is going to go up come December. So if Mexico is on your list, apply for residency now, unless you want more stringent qualifications come January. I've been in Mexico since 2017. When I got here, you needed about $1,200 a month. That number is now $4,000. It is tied to the Mexican minimum wage, which has gone up every year and the new president is probably going to raise it as well. So if Mexico is on your list, get your residency now if you qualify, because it is just going to get harder to qualify come January. Anything else in here? Okay, so I think we did it, y'all. Thanks for coming to hang out with me on a Tuesday. If you are watching this on the replay, remember there are lots of links in the descriptions to other videos where I go into more depth, some interviews I've done about, with people who have gone abroad as employees and as entrepreneurs. Thank y'all for coming to hang out with me, and I will see you again next Tuesday. Bye, everybody.